Mormon Apostle Jeff Holland is the master of logical fallacies, manipulation, guilt, and fake testimonies. Hey guys, this is DVH with the Mormon News Roundup. Yes, that's talent on loan from Kolob. Elder Holland illustrates the extreme, manipulative, and abusive expectations that LDS leaders place on its members, especially young missionaries. He spoke at the Provo Missionary Training Center to all missionaries in 2001. He set up some absurd expectations for those young men and young women in that address. Missionaries are expected to give all their energy to the church, and then some.
We want you to run all the way, every day, every step until this is over. To give the Lord a full 24-month or 18-month mission, for your sake, for the church's sake, for integrity's sake, for the prophet's sake. We don't want you to ruin your health. We just want 2 years from you. We just want 18 months from you. So start now. Just don't look back. Just put your face to the sun and put your shoulder into this work, and give it everything you've got and savor every day.
Though he followed up his horrific counsel with a half-hearted reassurance that we don't want you to ruin your health, the overwhelming message is clear. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints demands absolute sacrifice. Holland's words reinforce the idea that you must give everything to the institution, with no real regard for personal well-being. This horrific mindset isn't new. It reflects the broader pattern of LDS leadership prioritizing institutional loyalty over personal autonomy, well-being, and even basic human needs. When a manipulative leader tells missionaries that they cannot go home, that he will metaphorically throw his life before a barred door, that he has chains in every room, the terrible coercion is palpable. These statements by Holland paint a chilling picture. The church does not merely ask for devotion, it demands it.
Look at me and listen to me and see the fire in my eyes and the flame in my soul. You cannot ever go home. You've got to know what this means to me, what it has meant to my life, what it has meant to my family. The first missionary to go, a 180-degree turn for our entire family and its generations, to receive the gospel and go on a mission. I would do anything to keep a missionary in the mission field. I would hang on, would grab your leg, would twist your ankle, would put a full Nelson and a judo chop, and whatever it takes. I would make an absolute fool out of myself, which is about what I'm describing, just to have you know how much it matters. And someday soon, it won't be long, you'll laugh about the homesickness and smile about the necessitudes of the MTC or the shock of the culture, or the strangeness of the language. Every day and every way it will get better. That doesn't necessarily mean that it will get easier, but it will get better.
Now, variations of that talk were given multiple times by Jeff Holland at the MTC. And it's this talk and church teachings in general that employ high-demand religion tactics. And I know that we've talked a lot about Jeff Holland during this particular episode, but some of his horrific rhetoric has been leaked at the MTC, and it's in audio format only, but allow me to play it for you. It's one of the worst LDS addresses of all time.
I hope there's no one within the sound of my voice who wants to go home. I don't know who you are, and I don't know how seriously you're entertaining the thought, but don't you ever go home. Don't you dare leave this place. Don't you dare leave here for your sake. I have come in contact around the world with missionaries who did not see their mission through. Talking about somebody who just said, I don't like doing this, it's too hard, and I'm going home and let my mother take care of it. And if there is a more sorrowful, if there is a more anguished, if there is, in a sense, a more pitiable group in all the world, I do not know who it is. That's really strong language. I would wrestle you to the floor. I'd pull the curtains down. I'd get chained. I don't know, is there something around here that we tie people with? I don't see anything to tie people with. I'd rip the cords off the television camera to keep you here. But it's going to ruin your life if you don't do the best thing you've ever had a chance to do, however hard it is.
That talk is so bad on so many levels. When he says, we want 2 years from you, we want 18 months from you, this framing makes it seem like a reasonable request. But this ignores the immense physical, psychological, and emotional toll of missionary service. And when he says, I will not let you go, I will throw my life before a barred door. Remember, these are young adults, many of whom are barely out of high school, but they're being told in no uncertain terms that leaving is unacceptable. And Holland here is using classic shame and social pressure. When he says you cannot go for your sake, the clear message is that leaving would be a personal failure on your part. You're not just letting his beloved church down, you're ruining your entire life. This type of rhetoric is not about love, concern, or empathy. It's all about control. A healthy faith tradition should encourage personal growth, informed decision-making, and respect for boundaries. Instead, the LDS Church fosters an environment where members feel trapped, making them afraid to make choices that deviate from the institution's expectations. Holland's offensive remarks to these young missionaries, particularly the statement that some may die along the way and that's wonderful, highlight a deeply troubling mindset within LDS leaders. It's a culture that glorifies self-sacrifice to the institution, even to the point of death. While this bad address is framed as motivational, his words reveal a fundamental problem. The church demands complete devotion, not just in belief, but in total life dedication. His comparison between dying for the church and living for it suggests that death would be easier than enduring a lifetime of service. That's not a healthy message to vulnerable young adults, many of whom are already under a great deal of pressure to be on a mission in the first place. This rhetoric is just so deeply problematic for so many reasons. It glorifies death for the church. By saying that some missionaries may die in the service of the church and that it would be wonderful, Holland frames their death as a noble sacrifice. This is the same type of cult-like mentality that extreme organizations use to encourage individuals to give everything to them, including their lives. It also minimizes the seriousness of death. Holland implies that dying for the church would be easy, almost as if it was desirable. For missionaries who struggle with depression, anxiety, or homesickness, this message could have a devastating consequence. When a leader suggests that dying for the faith is honorable, it can reinforce hopelessness for those who are suffering, and it implies that if you don't die for the faith, you're not honorable. And let's not forget that this talk reinforces toxic productivity and burnout. The phrase, go all the way to the tape, implies an expectation of lifelong, relentless work for the church. Members are told to never slow down, never rest, never doubt. This rhetoric reinforces a culture of overwork, exhaustion, and self-neglect that plagues many Latter-day Saints. See, the church is demanding absolutely everything in this situation, but what does it give in return? Holland, throughout his address, emphasizes that you should give everything to his quasi-Masonic religion. Your health, your time, your money, even your life. But what does the church give back to you? Well, if we look at the Ensign Peak scandal, we can see that the church continues to hoard hundreds of billions of dollars to itself and has not used that wealth in meaningful ways to alleviate human suffering or even take care of its own members. Would a loving God truly require this level of sacrifice for an institution that has been repeatedly dishonest about its finances, its history, and its leadership? Would a truly compassionate leader dismiss the concerns of missionaries and tell them that if they die, it's wonderful? The reality is, a high-demand religious institution thrives when its members believe that they owe it everything, when they feel that they cannot say no. Holland's words are not about love or faith. They're about trying to exact lifelong obedience. Listen to me, you do not owe your life to the church. No healthy organization, religious or otherwise, should make its members feel obligated to give their entire existence in service for it. A true faith would nurture and support individuals, not drain them. The idea that dying for the church would be wonderful is not faith. It's complete manipulation. Holland's speech is particularly disturbing given the well-documented struggles of many missionaries. Mental health crisis, exhaustion, and tragically cases of suicide. When a religious leader literally admits that he has no sympathy for you and reinforces expectations of unyielding sacrifice, he is sending a literally dangerous message. Your suffering doesn't matter. Your individuality doesn't matter either. Only your service to the institution matters. This is simply not a message of a loving, compassionate faith. It's manipulation at its worst. LDS members, especially young missionaries, deserve leaders who see them as something more than expendable resources. A church that truly values its people would prioritize their well-being, encourage informed choices, and respect personal boundaries. Instead, the LDS Church uses guilt, fear, and coercion to extract unwavering devotion. Let's also look at another Jeff Holland talk, which he gave in January of 2001 at a fireside. It's filled with logical fallacies and emotional manipulation, rather than providing actual evidence for the LDS Church's truth claims.
If there is anyone in the room who's struggling with a testimony, you have one, mine. I'm giving my life to this. You're giving 2 years. I'm giving my life. Everything I own, everything I possess is on the line. I would not come tell you a fairy tale. I wouldn't wear myself into the ground, nor would President Hinckley do the same for something we did not know beyond a shadow of a doubt was God's almighty truth. Give me a little more credit than that. I'm not an absolutely stupid man. This is the truth. And I'm giving everything that I know to give for that declaration.
There's so much wrong with these addresses that it's hard to know where to start, but let's start with the borrowed testimony fallacy. This is an appeal to authority and emotional dependence. Holland suggests that if someone lacks a testimony, that they can simply borrow his. But belief isn't something that can be transferred like property. It requires personal conviction based on, wait for it, evidence and reason. Simply because a supposed authority thinks something is true doesn't make it true, especially when this so-called authority is a self-proclaimed authority. And at a deep foundational level, once again, Holland's address is deeply manipulative. He's discouraging critical thinking by pressuring individuals to adopt his certainty instead of seeking their own answers. He is suggesting that doubting is unnecessary because the thinking has already been done by him. And he also engaged in another logical fallacy, the appeal to personal sacrifice. Remember, he said, you're giving 2 years, but I'm giving my life. Everything I own, everything I possess is on the line. This is the appeal to sacrifice. The idea that he's propagating is that because he has personally sacrificed so much, it must be true. But the amount of effort that someone has put into a cause has absolutely nothing to do with whether that cause is actually true. Obviously, many people have dedicated their lives to institutions or causes that later turn out to be false or without foundation. And it's also an argument from inertia, which is a well-known logical fallacy. The idea is that you're supposed to stay on a mistaken course of action because admitting that you've made a mistake is unthinkable. All of this is pressuring young missionaries to feel guilty for questioning the church's truth claims. And why is that? It's because Holland has said that he sacrificed even more. This is an unfair comparison on its face. First of all, Jeff Holland is well compensated to lie for the Lord, but young missionaries are literally paying to be there. All of this is just further examples of how Jeff Holland uses emotional manipulation, logical fallacies, and shame to control his flock. Another church leader, Dallin Oaks, has stated that you can find a testimony by bearing it, or essentially pretending to have a testimony until you actually do.
Another way to seek a testimony seems astonishing when compared with the methods of obtaining other knowledge. We gain or strengthen a testimony by bearing it. Testimonies are better gained on the feet bearing them than on the knees praying for them.
Now, if we take a look at Jeff Holland's infamous 2012 BBC interview with Mr. Sweeney, we will be able to uncover many more logical fallacies that he likes to employ. Now, I can't play the actual clips here or they will be copyright struck, but here's what he said.
If people want to call us a cult, they can call us a cult, and you can call us a cult. But we are 14 million and growing, and I'd like to think that your respect for me would be enough to know that this man doesn't seem like a dodo.
This is one of Jeff Holland's worst arguments, but he loves to trot it out over and over again. He's brought it up multiple times that he's not stupid. In this interview, he literally says that, plus he says he's not a dodo, and he says that he's not an idiot. He really thinks highly of himself, and he expects others to do so as well. He thinks that because he has an Ivy League degree and a senior Mormon leadership calling, that he's an expert or authority on matters of religion, and that we should just take his word for things. This is yet another appeal to authority, and it's a false dilemma. Holland seems to be suggesting that because he's intelligent, that he must be correct about the church's truthfulness. But intelligence doesn't equal correctness. Highly intelligent people have been incorrect about many things throughout history, and appeals to authority are fundamentally misguided. It's entirely possible that the opinion of a person or institution of authority is wrong. Therefore, the authority that such a person or institution holds does not have any intrinsic bearing upon whether their claims are true. All of this is just Jeff Holland trying to manipulate almost every single situation that he gets in. It implies that people who disagree with him are insulting his intelligence. This discourages doubting because it frames questions as a personal attack rather than just a sincere dialogue or quest for truth. And here's a little bit more from that interview.
I would not come tell you a fairy tale. I wouldn't wear myself into the ground, for something we did not know beyond a shadow of a doubt was God's almighty truth.
This is yet another logical fallacy. It's an appeal to personal integrity, implying that because Holland believes that he's being honest, his claims therefore must be true. But honesty and truthfulness are simply not the same thing. Even an honest person can be sincerely mistaken. And this line of dialogue is also an appeal to personal incredulity, in that Holland cannot fathom that his claims are a fairy tale. Just because you found something difficult to understand or explain, or are unaware of how something works, doesn't mean that you get to insert your supernatural explanation. And let's be clear about all of this. Instead of Holland offering evidence for anything that he said so far, he just merely leans on his own perceived credibility. He's trying to make members feel guilty for doubting, because it implies that doubts are the same thing as accusing a leader of lying. Holland's rhetoric at the BBC or at the MTC or in Firesides is almost never about providing evidence for the church's supposed truthfulness. It's always about pressuring members to stop questioning. His words rely on guilt, emotional appeals, and logical fallacies, rather than just presenting the evidence for his case. This kind of messaging is really damaging because it squashes critical thinking and discourages independent thought. A healthy faith would welcome questions and allow members to find their own answers, not demand that they borrow someone else's supposed certainty. Gaining a testimony of the Mormon Church or any other institution or claim for that matter through an intellectually honest approach requires a rigorous and unbiased method of investigation. This means avoiding confirmation bias and rejecting appeals to emotion. Allow me to outline just a few ways to honestly examine the truthfulness of the LDS Church. Before beginning any investigation, one must establish clear criteria for what would actually qualify that the Church's truth claims are true. You should definitely consider historical accuracy. Do the foundational claims actually conform with what we know about history? And are the Church's truth claims consistent? Are doctrines, revelations, and teachings internally consistent over time? And you should look for empirical verification. Can the actual truth claims be tested or even falsified? And you should look at the moral and ethical coherence. Do the Church's teachings align with ethical principles independent of Church authority? An honest seeker should be willing to accept any conclusion, whether it supports or challenges their beliefs. This means being open to the possibility that the Church's truth claims hold up, are partially true, or are false. Rather than relying strictly on faith-promoting sources like church-approved materials, a thorough investigation should examine all possible evidence. This would include the primary documents, independent historical research, and critiques and apologetics. If you really want to know if the Church is true, you need to form a hypothesis. For example, the LDS Church is the one true church restored by God. Then you need to gather some evidence, review historical records, theological arguments, and even personal experiences. Then you need to test your predictions. For instance, if Joseph Smith is a prophet, then his prophecy should come to pass. And if the Book of Mormon is historical, there should be some archaeological evidence. And one should be willing to consider alternative explanations. Could these spiritual experiences confirming the Church's truth be psychological in nature? Could the growth of the Church be explained by social rather than divine factors? And you should be able to repeat and verify your results. Compare findings from multiple sources to see if your conclusions hold up under scrutiny. Many testimonies rely on subjective feelings. You know, the famous burning in the bosom. While feelings are certainly valid for personal experiences, they are not reliable methods of determining divine truth. Ask questions to clarify truth from mere feelings, and ask yourself the following 3 questions. Do people of other faiths experience the same confirming feelings? Are there psychological explanations for these emotions? And can truth be established independently of emotional responses? If the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is true, then its claims should withstand a rigorous scrutiny.
We want nothing secret nor underhanded, and for one I want no association with things that cannot be talked about and will not bear investigation.
If the Church is not true, then accepting this fact should not be feared, but it should be embraced as an honest search for truth.
If we have truth, it cannot be harmed by investigation. If we have not truth, it ought to be harmed.
After weighing all of the evidence, draw your conclusion based on facts, not on what you hope is true.
Facts are more important than any cherished mistaken beliefs.
Intellectual honesty means being willing to change one's beliefs if the evidence points in a different direction. By following this method, one can arrive at a testimony, or lack thereof, based on reason and evidence, rather than on logical fallacies, bias, and emotion. Well, we're wrapping things up here, folks. An intellectually honest pursuit of truth requires us to examine beliefs critically, consider all available evidence, and be open to conclusions that we may not have anticipated. If the Mormon Church is true, its claims should hold up under rigorous scrutiny. If it isn't, then we owe it to ourselves to acknowledge reality rather than cling to comforting but unfounded beliefs. Truth shouldn't require mental gymnastics, suppression of doubt, logical fallacies, or emotional manipulation. It should stand on its own.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.
Temper tantrums are not cute even in children. They are despicable in adults, especially adults who are supposed to love each other. We are sometimes, maybe too often, too easily provoked. Let's act a little more maturely. Bite your tongue if you have to. He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city.
But I think there's some days here where we get a little weak-kneed, we get a little willy-nilly, and say, I'm going to bail on this. Don't you dare bail. I am so furious with people who leave this church. I don't know whether furious is a good apostolic word. But I am. And I say, what on earth kind of conviction is that? What kind of patty cake, taffy poke experience is that? As if none of this ever mattered, as if nothing in our contemporary life mattered, as if this is all just supposed to be just exactly the way I want it, and answer every one of my questions, and pursue this, and occupy that, and defy this, and then maybe I'll be a Latter-day Saint. Well, there's too much Irish in me for that. This church means everything to me, and I'm not going to leave it, and I'm not going to let you leave it. The first great rule of a storm at sea is stay in the boat. This is no time for you to say, oh, well, it looks like, I don't know, nobody cares. I'll get up here on the edge and do a little half gainer over the side. Boy, that's a terrific performance. I tell you, you're in for a good experience. That's the dumbest thing you can do. And the only thing dumber would be for somebody else to follow you. You stay in the boat and pull a life jacket down on you and grab an oar and just hang on, and it's going to get calm.